I'm here with James. I'm Jason Roeder, and we're going to have a candid conversation. And you're going to get to learn a lot about what I would say is one of the world's most interesting men. And he's got a lot of interesting stories. So I hope you enjoy. So um, I titled this conversation Inventing the Future.
Ooh, nice.
Inventing the Future, a conversation with James. And so um, here's the brief overview. James, you've had an incredible journey, tech pioneer,
Yeah. Yeah.
Inventor,
Yes.
critical thinker,
Yes.
lots of interesting relationships. So I think the central theme of your story, and I want to kind of get into the early roots of your innovation.
Okay.
It's innovation. It's resilience as well as innovation. And then you have this passion of in inventing things that have an impact on future,
Correct.
like creating a better future for people and for others and for yourself.
Correct.
So tell me about the early roots of innovation in your life. When did it come to you where you're like, I love creating things?
Oh, so I was probably in fifth grade, living down in Arizona, and I was fascinated by dams. And so we lived in this apartment complex that had a nice water flow when we were not getting in trouble for turning it on and wasting water. But I had built some really cool dams. I built a dam that was probably about 2 feet tall, and it held back water enough to flood a whole parking lot in front of our complex. Got in trouble for it, but hey, there was 2 feet of water there, and I was holding it back when it was coming down a hill, so I was pretty excited about
Mission
that.
accomplished.
Mission accomplished. Yeah.
What about like junior high? You talked about like circuits and lights and things like that.
So I love science,
Mhm.
and I loved playing with. Well, I had an erector set when I was a smaller kid, and I would play with that, building just weird contraptions like cranes and things like that. But when I got into science and we started playing with electricity, so made a little AM radio in the class. I love playing with little motors, so they always had these little motors that they took out of really whatever, and usually they had little gears on them. So I'd get them running with some battery and see what I could get to spin, over on the other side.
I love that.
Oh yeah, so I love playing with circuits, playing with electricity, seeing making resin light bulbs, night lights, and stuff like that. It was fun.
Right.
Yeah.
So part of your story is a passion for computers. How far back does that go?
Yeah, so and I believe it was 1978. I was in middle school in Eugene,
Okay.
and we had a computer, and I don't remember if it was an Apple. It might have been an Apple IIe or something like that, but it had a tape cassette that you played the program, and so we'd sit there and we'd play games. Well, I figured out, oh, hey, you know what? This game, I can cheat the game basically. And so there was this game about storms, and I started programming it to go back across my side around the screen and get my opponent from the other side, not sending the storm directly from him. I found out it worked better; it had more strength. And then just playing with little basic commands, like your name flying across the screen. That was pretty cool. Getting colors to start. Well, actually, at that time it was amber screen, so there was no color, but getting flashing screen.
Oh yeah,
and stuff like that. So yeah, so it was fun playing around with and it was basically it was basic language.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. So take us back to data concepts in Phoenix.
Yes.
Right, and the kind of like the computer age, the awakening of the computer age. So take us back to that early CAD experiences and things like that.
Yeah, so in about 1982, I was done with school, moved over to the other side of Phoenix. We moved back to Phoenix from Oregon. And there was a company called Data Concepts, and a friend of mine worked for them.
Okay.
And so I would go to work with them. I was kind of trying to figure out who I was and what I was doing, just moved out of home. And so went and started playing with the early K-Pro computer systems. which were at that time, they weren't like AT computers. The K-Pro computer looked like a big suitcase that you open up. There was a screen and two large floppy drives, one for the program, one for the operating system, and you can save your data on there. And then the keyboard was the front. And they had one of the first laptops I saw. I think it was called the K-Pro 2000.
Okay.
And so that was pretty fun, and I was playing little games on that. But then also I got to go in to watch the guys working on because they would take them apart, repair them, assemble them.
Right.
And then I met a guy named Jim Delatoso, who was one of the lead CAD programmers in the U.S. at the time, and I was watching him do not just CAD programming, but 3D, almost like 3D modeling, except it was more animation.
Okay.
And so I got to sit with him and watch his class. But I got interested in CAD at that time. Didn't really do much with it, but I got interested in, oh, this is cool. Computers can design stuff too.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. So what sparked your idea to commercialize like tech and in the area of like government, education, military? Tell us about that. Like, how did that come about?
Yeah, so I worked for a company that was much like the Yellow Page operator. They were called Phonex in Phoenix, and Yellow Page Information Bureau. And you would call them and get a referral to, like a local plumber or Domino's Pizza in your zip code or something like that. And I was like, oh, this is such a cool idea. And they had these big old servers, the Wang 2200, which I actually crashed. And that's why I wasn't working there anymore. I was debugging it during an electrical storm, and I didn't know you weren't supposed to do that. Ended up hearing an explosion in the room, and a hole inside of the case came out like that. They had to replace the hard drive and programming. But anyway, so little sidestep there, but their concept was pretty cool. And I was like, why can't this be a global concept? Why can't, I can be in New York and I'm looking for a plumber for my villa in, Paris. Why can't I call and get somebody to go work on it? And so I designed this company, and actually it was called RefNet International.
RefNet.
And it stood for Referral Network, and networking the earth was my slogan.
I like that.
Anyway, as I was putting it together, I'm just like, well, how am I going to get, all of my data from what I collect here, what I collect there, all together? And before that, I had worked for MCI in their Watts, so 1-800 telecommunications, but I had also had experience with modems. Okay. And so I was like, oh, we could transfer the data every day.
That's fascinating.
Around the globe.
Yeah.
And so anyway, and I was looking for money, a young man at that time, under 30, looking for about $35-40 million to develop this company globally. And I sent my business plan to newly elected Bill Clinton and Al Gore. And what it did talk about, now my idea was not the commercialization of the internet, but it was using what was existing out there between military, education, and government.
Their communication
system and data transfer system to transfer all of my data around the globe daily. And so
almost like a worldwide web.
World Wide Web, basically, because my plan was to be in, I think at the beginning of it, the thought process was like 85 cities in the world. Sure. And so, I wanted to be in every major area, right? Europe and Asia and of course the US. And so that way, all of my data would be up to date every single day. And so that was, in fact, we were going to use the telecommunications system to even transfer calls from, say, New York to France via Watts lines, and so it was not just a telecommunications issue; it was a telecommunications data transfer thing.
Did you ever hear back from the president or Al Gore or the administration?
I did get a letter back from the White House. And it was actually just one of those generic letters. Hey, thanks for talking to us and sending us your concept, and thanks for telling us that we hope Bill Clinton does a great job. So yes, I did get a letter back, but nothing acknowledging what my thought process was, but it was still pretty cool.
Right. Right on. So do you think they took your idea and ran with it and added to it? Or what's your theory as to what maybe happened? Because this is way before.
Yeah, 1993.
Yeah, way before things really, I mean, it's before the web really launched.
Right.
So.
Well, what I believe happened, and Al Gore never said I invented the internet. He never said that about himself. Yeah. What he did say is he did push for the commercialization of the internet, and honestly, I was playing with AI one day, and I told them what I did, and AI popped back and said, "It's possible that you influenced the commercialization of the internet."
Right.
So I was pretty stoked about that.
Sure.
So, yeah,
that's pretty cool.
I'm pretty sure I did.
That's pretty sweet. That's awesome. Yeah. So tell me a story. You were telling me a story of a phone call you had with the Terminator. Yeah. And that's a cool story. Give us some background on, like, how did that all come together? Who was it with and all that?
Yeah, so I was writing a business plan for a movie studio that was going to be outside of Carson City, Nevada, in Virginia City. Okay. And it was going to be a Western movie studio. And we had picked up, I wrote the business plan for it. And then we had gotten a board of directors. Well, one of those board of directors, well, there was several, there were 7 of them. One of them was John Taylor from LucasArts Skywalker Ranch. He was a sound engineer there. Crazy. But another one was a director named George Caceres. And at the time, he was actually not a very well-known director. He made some music videos. And in fact, he sent me one of his very early music videos. It was pretty cool to like, oh man, this is going to be on MTV.
Cool, that's cool.
But he was at a party or at his house, and maybe the party came to him. I'm not sure how that worked out, but he goes, "Hey, hold on, I want you to talk to somebody." And he said, "Arnold, come over here." And Arnold came over, and he handed Arnold the phone, I guess, because I heard Arnold saying, "Hello." And I was like, I'm in shock here. I'm talking to the Terminator. But it was pretty cool. Just that I got to say hi to Arnold Schwarzenegger at a party.
That's pretty cool. Not many people can say that.
Yeah.
That is really cool. So let's talk about your experience with the hospitality industry. Okay. Yeah. And like, there's a hotel in Reno that you told a story about, and helping bring hotel chains online and things like that. So DSL breakthroughs and stuff like that.
So it's a several year activity. However, so when I left the computer, I was working in a computer shop and running my company on the side, trying to get it built up, RefNet. And what I ended up doing, though, it needed money. So I stepped up to a higher position and started working in the hotel in Ramada hotels. Now, I did have prior hotel experience. I worked at the Phoenician Resort in Scottsdale, Arizona, and I worked in the original Embassy Suites hotel also in Scottsdale. Anyway, so I ended up getting a position as a director of sales and marketing, but quickly moving as the general manager. And as a general manager, I was invited to go to the regional conferences that Ramada would have. Well, one of our regional conferences was in California, and it was just right after, this was 1995, 96. I was at this conference, and the VP of marketing of Ramada had come, and he was telling us what the marketing plans for the company were. And it was like, "Weren't you guys getting on the internet?" And he was like, "Well, the internet's too new. We don't know what to do." And I literally gave them an education right there about the internet and why you need to be on it. Right. And within 2 weeks, he came, got me a phone call from my regional director and said, "Hey, you talked us into the internet."
Wow.
And they started designing their web presence there. And it was literally neck and neck between HFS, which was Ramada, Howard Johnson Days Inn, and Hilton coming online to a web presence on the web. It was a race, but I talked them into coming online, and they were one of the first hotel companies that had an online presence.
That is cool.
So then, fast forward to the future, I moved from Reno up here to Oregon, get back into working in an internet company, helping basically teching and trying to sell, broadband services and that. And over a couple of years of back and forth moving around, I ended up in Eugene.
Okay.
And I was walking down the street one day and I see this sign on the wall saying high-speed internet. Well, I went in there and I said, "Oh, tell me about your high-speed internet." And the guy was kind of like, "Oh, you probably wouldn't understand. It's not just dial-up modem." So I was like, "Well, I used to work for a tier 1 provider, which is pretty remarkable, being on the where the internet converges in the Western U.S."
Right.
And so he was excited. He brought me in. And I said, "Well, I do consulting for you." And so he had me work on this box that was about $750,000 box, and it served DSL and all sorts of internet capabilities. And he said, first thing is, I can't get it to talk. So I quickly dug in, and I was doing some work with Unix at the time.
Okay.
So I quickly dug into BSD, which was what was on the device, and got it talking. And we started playing with alarm circuits. And alarm circuit is literally 2 wires from point A to point B coming through the whole system.
Okay.
Anyway, we had a frame relay coming down from Portland, UUNet, which was so it traveled all the way down to almost to our office, but it was missing by about 8 miles. Wow. So I took 2 wires and went from an alarm circuit, from that frame relay down to our office to our big $750,000 box. 42,000 line feet, which is further than DSL had ever gone. And it was certified by Quest and certified by Ascendant Communications, which owned the box. And we had 42,000 line feet of traffic. I had half, which is really good still, of my T1, which T1 is 1.54 megabits per second. And I had 756K kilobits. So that's pretty good. So kilobits. And so, so I had traffic, I had it moving. And the guy wanted to stick it into apartment complexes. And I'm like, "Hey, that's pretty good. I can help you do that." But then I was just like, "Oh, in the hotel business, this would be perfect, because people come in with their laptops and they're plugging into the phone system." And literally one time in Reno, I had to unplug my PBX so I can make an emergency call out.
Oh, geez.
Because I had to kick everybody offline. So I thought, in the hotels, this would be great. So I engineered how we could put a DSL server in, and basically it's a switch, but in the phone room of a hotel, and we could serve all of the rooms. And we were using Ascend products, which became Lucent and AT&T. And we were using their products, had their engineers come down and, this works. This is a great idea. And so we started a company. Well, the company was WinCorp that I went to consult for. They ended up, with my engineering, signing a $10.5 billion agreement, with Sendit Corporation, which was going to put high-speed internet in all of their hotel rooms.
Wow.
Sadly, things fell apart, not in the technology, but in the finance side and getting monies to move where they were supposed to. So we ended up losing that contract to a company called Case Internet, which came in pretty quick after. And that was a guy from AT&T. He was a former guy from AT&T.
AT&T?
Yeah. So then my company was consulting. So my company was CMRX2.
Okay.
And RefNet had gone bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, when I couldn't fund it. So CMRX2, we were working on a deal with Best Western, but we didn't want somebody just to bring their laptop in and plug into a DSL. We wanted anybody who wanted to use the internet in their room. So we worked with a company called Bast Inc. out of California, and they brought a little TV set-top box that they were experimenting with. And I felt bad for the CEO of the company. He was the one showing us the product, and it didn't work. And my board was like, "Oh, just get him out of here. He's wasting our time." Well, I was the CEO. I'm like, no. Let me go talk. So I went and I talked to him. I said, let us work with this. I said, sitting in this room is literally one of the guys who designed the ATM switch for Clackamas High School District as a science project in 1963. And I said, he and I will look at this and we'll get your product working, and we're going to make it so it's quieter. And that's when we came up with, we didn't want fans. So we didn't want noise. Obviously, if you're sleeping, you don't want some noise in the background. So we took hard drives out. We were looking for, and I didn't want Windows, Microsoft products in it because it's too bulky. So we came up with we found a company that was just playing with Linux to embed it into the BIOS. Okay. So Embed Linux 1.0 was something that we were pushing, and we ended up getting their set-top boxes to have no hard drive in it. You could put one in, but also no fans. And so it could run quietly in a room. They ended up selling the Bass 2000 is what they called it. And but we designed that, and we were going to put it in Best Western hotels. Again, another setback with people.
People.
Oh gosh, yeah. I had a partner. I had a couple of partners, and one of them really became a thorn in our side. And our attorney said, "Hey, you haven't taken money yet. Better shut it down, because he's going to get you guys in financial issue with SEC and stuff like that." Because we were wanting to go public.
Sure.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah.
So you've told me about taking some of your ideas, and those ideas have taken you like around the world.
Yeah.
Dubai in specific. And so there's this like seismic safety for man-made islands. The thing we talked about, an Earth orbiter designed to clean orbital debris, things like that.
Oh, yeah.
Tell me about some of that, and tell the story of like the water system and how that kind of got you to Dubai, and just tell us that whole global project idea.
So I went to work for one of the investors in my company in CMRX2, and he was the good partner. And I went to work for him. He had a development company, and we were designing. We were working on projects here in Oregon, but he wanted to do some projects in the Middle East. So in 2005, we went over to Dubai for a conference called Cityscape. And we were showcasing some of our Oregon projects, but also we were looking at the world, the islands, the man-made islands by Dubai. And I went out on a little tour with one of the sales guys. And I'm looking around. I have a background in geology. In fact, in 2003-4, when Mount St. Helens was getting ready to erupt, I was actually telling people, it's going to erupt, it's going to erupt. You can watch it on the seismographs, it's going to erupt. And then, of course, it did. And even had some, not words with Jim Steele from the USGS, but I was just like, how did you not know? The evidence was there, because when it erupted, we didn't see this coming. But anyway, so back to Dubai, though. When the sales guy was taking me out, I was looking at some of the erosion that was happening on the top. And I was just like, but I knew how they were digging it out and making the islands. And I was like, tell me about the erosion. And the guy stands up at the boat. What erosion? I don't see any erosion. And I'm like, oh, come on, man. You can see this happening right here, but I'm more interested in what's down below. And so we went to this big model home that they had. It was like 30,000 square feet. And it was a showcase home. And I saw that there was fresh paint. And I'm like, oh, you guys just painted. Oh, yeah, there's cracks. I'm like, well, there's cracks again, and it's fresh paint. That means that this thing is moving. And then there was other telltale signs of it moving. And so I told them, I said, and Nikhil was the big company that was doing it. Nikhil was the government-run development company. And I said, what are you guys doing about erosion, about holding these islands together? And they said, oh, we've engineered it, we studied it. Okay, well, show me the data. I want to see it. Never got the data. So I started investigating myself. Well, UAE is, Dubai itself is only 100 kilometers from a very active seismic zone. And I told them, I said, your stuff is going to sink. The next year, Iran had a big earthquake. And another island project was the Palm Jumeirah. And the building started sinking.
Oh boy.
And I had told them all the way from the beginning, hey, we need to vibrafloat this. We need to turn the sand into sandstone so it's going to stay. And they didn't do it until after that earthquake. And then they're vibrafloating everything, making sure it stands. So I saved our company. We were going to invest $260 million into that to build, and that was just to buy the islands, not including we were going to build a 7-star hotel there, had all the designs and everything. But even we were supposed to put $26 million down and do our due diligence within 90 days, and we wouldn't even get all of our money. We'd end up leaving $2.5 million on the table there. And I was just like, we should not invest at all until we know that this is taken care of. Wow. And as you can see, if you looked on anything today, the world is still got some stuff going on it, but it's not the elaborate, beautiful thing that they were planning out from the beginning, because there was too much unsturdiness in the ground. But the Jumeirah, actually, they did a good job of firming. Atlantis Resort is on Jumeirah, and it's not sinking at all. So they did a good job there.
Wow, that's cool. What about the desalination system? Did I say that right?
Yeah, desalinization.
Desalinization,
So in 2008, I'm sitting in my office here in Portland, and at first I designed this carbon molecule called carbon-8, and I won't get too much into that right now. It's actually coming, I'm starting to redesign on it right now. But then I was designing the spaceship, and I was like, we need to clean up the debris in space. We got satellites that are, exploding, some that are trying to fall down, some, we have tools in space that fell out of the space station. They're floating around hitting stuff. Yep. And I'm just like, we need to capture all of this stuff, containerize it and send it back to Earth, or containerize it and recycle it in space, and then use the components. We have hydrocarbons and there we have metals and things that we could literally use if we can make tools and repair satellites. It was a very large ship. I actually don't remember the dimensions on it because it's been a long time since I looked at that.
Sure.
But it had a capture that it would fly into orbit, capture the material, pull it up inside, and robots would actually separate and do all the work.
Cool. Like a spatial garbage.
Yeah, a big garbage truck. Yeah. So when I was designing that, and I went and I talked to one of the guys in the company, I said, yeah, this is my design. It's pretty cool. We should look at it. And he's like, why don't you design something that's useful to mankind down here? And I'm like, well, this is, but yeah, you're right. Let's see what we can do on the Earth.
Yeah.
So I went back to my desk and I started praying, and I saw a thundercloud. I was like, thundercloud, water desalinization. And nature's way of cleaning our water, taking seawater and turning it into drinking water.
Sure.
And so I did. I sat down and I started designing not just the desalinization plant, but I designed a whole system around it. So water would be collected from the sea, it would be evaporated, cooled, collected, moved into another location, and I planned it for 100 million gallons of water a day. So a very large plant. Could grow about 1,000 acres of rice, because I was thinking of something that water could just set in all the time.
There you go.
And until you want to harvest it, you dry it out, harvest it. And then it would go into another containment that would be mineralize the water. So it would etch out, I don't know if etching is the right word, leach. It would leach minerals out of the rocks that it would pass through. And I was like, we could have sweet water, we could have really nice mineralized water that's healthy for the body, and then it would pass through a filtering system and be collected and distributed.
Wow.
So it was, and I called it Abraham's Well. That's still the name of it. And it's the Jojira water system. So Yahweh Jireh.
I like that.
Yeah, God provides water, and He's doing it now through a system. And funny thing is, the last time I was in Saudi Arabia, I got to visit with Saudi Aramco, and I visited with the son of the number 3 guy.
Wow.
And he's like, hey, put a plan together when you come back, and let's sit down and talk about this. Water desalinization is already happening there. But what if we could do it better and use the water and the tailings of it, the high salinity water, because you could gear how much salinity you want in it.
Okay.
You could use it for fracking. And in fact, they were talking about taking water from the Red Sea and filling the Dead Sea, because the Dead Sea is becoming actually a nightmare. But the Dead Sea's salinity is not the same. So, or the Red Sea, their salinities are way different. Sure. And what if we could have salinated water that was the exact salinity of the Dead Sea? We could fill it back up and it would thrive.
Yeah.
And so that was the concept there. And I actually talked to a group out of Jordan about the same thing around the same time. So we'll see how that goes.
Well, tell us next about your Siemens lunch story, about the CEO and your supervisor.
Yeah. So
what happened there?
So my supervisor and I, we always went to sushi, sit down and eat. Well, I had, so Siemens Water was selling.
Okay.
And their water technology business was up for sale. I had talked to my friends in Saudi Arabia about possibly investing in it.
Okay.
And so they're like, well, find the information, find out about it. So I called Siemens and the water technology group, and I had left a message with their CEO. Well, I happened to be sitting and munching on sushi with my boss, and I get this call, so I answer it, and it's the CEO of Siemens Water Technology. Unfortunately, they were literally that day signing a deal with the company to buy them, but he heard me out. He's like, well, talk to me. If this is something maybe we should put on hold, we'll put it on hold. And we ended up not, because my guys in Saudi, sometimes they're a little slow in reacting on stuff, but they did want the information. So that was pretty cool. Though my boss was like, you just talked to the CEO of Siemens Water Technology. Who are you?
Yeah. How'd you get that? How'd you get him to call you? Right?
Yeah.
Like, that's kind of crazy. So your name was getting around the industry, and you've met people in high positions and had influence with them. And Microsoft selects you to lobby for them in DC.
Yeah.
Now, for like digital privacy, right? Is that right?
Yes, it is.
How did that happen?
So there was a group called Voices for Innovation.
Okay.
And I was literally the 10th person that they got into the group way back in the early 2000s. And it was kind of I'd say an elite group, because it was business people that were had influence in Microsoft. And I had dealt with Microsoft a lot.
Okay.
Even yelling at them about driver issues and configuring drivers that they could use with some of their operating systems. Okay. Even trained some of the Microsoft employees at one of their hands-on training, because I'm an outsider and I knew what their server OS was, and they didn't.
That's crazy.
It was actually funny. I got the free class too, because I was teaching instead of listening and learning. Yeah. Anyway, so being part of Voices for Innovation, they called me and said, "Hey, we're planning this thing in DC. You're the only guy in Oregon that we have that's a member of the Voices for Innovation. Wow. We want to get and talk, and it looks like Kurt Schrader is your congressman." And I'm like, I'm on it. Tell me what you want. And so I did. I went to DC, lobbied, and it was lobbying for Microsoft. I got to meet with Kurt Schrader in person. Oh, wow. And Ron Wyden and Jeff Merkley were not available in person, but I met with their staff also. But Kurt Schrader, really cool guy. Really? In fact, I had a funny story for him, and then I found out later the story wasn't even accurate from my vantage point. I told him I was delivered by a veterinarian. He's a veterinarian. I found out later my mom was just joking with me when she told me that. And so I was been carrying the story around for years. I was delivered by a veterinarian named Dr. Bull, but no, he was not an actual veterinarian. Anyway, but it got my foot in the door to talk to Kurt Schrader, and I sat there, and he sponsored, I think he co-sponsored the bill. Okay. And it was on digital privacy, and it was dealing with the U.S. government's ability to dig into a American company overseas and gather information on overseas employees, which are not U.S. citizens. And so we wanted to put a stop to that. You can't go dig into another country's employees, even if it's in your company, but they're citizens of another country. Right. So he sponsored the bill. I'm Actually, I'd seen it come up a few times in the recent past, like they were looking at trying to pass it. It was to update the digital privacy, which was intended at first for telephones and faxes.
Oh, okay.
And now it's for digital everything.
Yeah. Interesting. So you have a different way that you see the world. It's obvious you look at the world differently than most people, right? Your mind and the way it works and scientifically. Why thinking differently? Why is that a key to solving like tomorrow's problems?
Well, because today's problems are generated by today's thinking and yesterday's thinking.
Yes.
And like I said, problems. Their solutions are also, but most of our problems are because of the way that we think.
Yeah.
And so I like to think in ways, how can we help the future? How can we help future generations? How can we solve problems that we have right now that will help future generations?
Right.
And so I try to look at things and with an open mind. I'm not stuck on, oh, hey, this is my way, the only way, and that's it. I allow my thinking to be moved when I'm designing something or thinking about a process. I allow it to be moved as I understand different things. And when I say understand, it's not just because I'm sitting there and I'm just looking at it. No, I go and I talk to people. Hey, what do you think about this? And I collaborate. My current company, which is International Technical Computing Design and Innovation Consortium, the consortium part is the gathering together of minds and working together. And that's the way I believe we should work, not just here in the local community, but also in the global community. We're on the same planet. Right. This is a globe. We're all part of it. Why should we be in a little fence and just do our things and that's it?
Right.
Everything that we do here or they do over there affects the whole.
Sure.
And so thinking about it, looking at it from different angles, and unconventional thoughts. And I'll tell you, God gave me a really good brain, but he also drops things into my brain.
Yeah.
And lets me see pictures of things. And so it's like, we know biblically, we know what the Bible says. And that's accurate 100%, not changeable. But how we get there, God allows innovation. When he allowed the telephone, when he allowed light bulbs, he allowed these people, he didn't block them and say, oh, no, you're not going to do that. You're going to live by candlelight and campfire. Or, you're going to have smoke signals to communicate. No, he gave us the ability to think, to transform. Even in Christianity, we're a global brotherhood. We're not just U.S. Christians and Chinese Christians. Right. We're a global brotherhood. So he gave us the ability to think for the globe, for mankind. So why would we keep it inside?
Right.
Just keep it to ourselves.
That's not right.
No, exactly.
Well, with everything you've done, what are you dreaming about today? What's the future look like for you?
So I mentioned carbonate.
Carbonate.
Carbonate is a design of 8 carbon atoms that are assembled. Basically, they look like a drill.
Okay.
When I saw the picture of it, I saw the design, the 8 atoms, and then I saw Leonardo da Vinci's Atlas of a Man. I saw electrical and magnetic currents flowing through the body and through the carbonate molecule.
Okay, that's a visual. Okay.
And they were at the time when I thought about it, was to attack cancer. Since then, and I have to say, this is a sad thing about James, is sometimes I'll get discouraged on a project and I'll just put it in a file cabinet and forget about it. Well, recently, I was having a discussion with somebody about prayer and cures for things like polio and measles, and they basically put, science cured, polio, name 10 things that science cured, prayer 0. And I took offense to that. Kind of. I don't take offense easily, but I was kind of like, oh, come on, guys. Somebody had to have been praying for a cure. That's how science got the cure. And maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. I always give God glory for even when science comes up with something because, well, he made the brain. So I was talking to them and I said, look, God is going to cure HIV. And they're just like, oh, yeah, you're blowing smoke out your
Right.
backside.
Right.
And I said, no, he's going to do it, and he's going to do it very soon. Well, recently, I saw my carbonate molecule, and I saw the spike proteins in HIV, and I saw my molecule zapping those proteins
Really?
and killing those spike proteins.
Just eliminating them.
Eliminating them,
Wow.
which would kill the way the virus hangs onto our bodies.
Right.
And of course, we have another
Wow.
virus that has spike proteins. That's COVID-19
Mm-hmm.
and all of its variants.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Wow.
And so he showed me even the MRI, how it's supposed to be built, and so how it's going to work when somebody goes through it. Now, has it been tested? Nope. And am I a doctor? No, I am not. So I'm going to take it to OHSU and talk to them about it. That's just one thing. The water desalinization, he literally showed me the thundercloud again. I had redesigned it. You know, never do this with God stuff. When God says, I'm going to give you a picture of something, here's how I want you to build it, like Noah, he did just so.
Don't try to improve on it.
No, what James did is I had my think tank. I actually had a think tank. At the time it was PDX Think. I had a bunch of guys. I had guys from Raytheon, from Bonneville Power, Intel, one guy that did work on NASA and telescopes down in Arizona.
Oh, wow.
So I had these smart people sitting there, and we decided that, it would look better if it looked like a nuclear cooling facility. And that's not what God had designed.
Yeah,
it's not what he showed me. So recently he had me redesign it. And that one I'm actually going to try to take to Neom. That's the 180 kilometer city. And it's the whole system, not just the water desalinization part. It's the whole system. Grow crop, have your saline water that you can pipe up to Jordan and fill into Dead Sea. Use it for fracking and oil wells. So that's the water desalinization. That was the carbonate. Recently, he showed me, and I say he showed me because God always drops these things in my brain. I like to go out in my field and I pray and I worship. And Jeremiah 33:3 is a life verse for me. Call to me and I will answer you and show you great and mighty things that you do not know. And he always is faithful to do it. So I'm out there in the field and I'm talking to him about graphene.
Okay.
And I had a friend say, hey, we should try to figure out how to grow graphene. Well, I now have a process. It's in the mind, and I've been looking at the tools to do it.
Okay.
And we can grow sheets of graphene that we can, as an example, I had an idea about encasing Air Force One with graphene and running cameras all over the whole thing and LEDs all over the whole thing, and literally being able to transfer whatever's on the other side through the cameras into the LEDs. Basically, it would cloak it visually.
Yeah.
Wouldn't cloak it like the stealth bomber, but it would cloak it visually like it would be flying over. You might see a shimmer, but that would be about it. You wouldn't see the jet itself. So growing graphene. The other few weeks ago, he showed me about building carbon blocks, pure carbon, and then welding them together. So you could literally make a space. I was thinking about Elon Musk and SpaceX. What if we built a spaceship that was totally one block of carbon, but it had all the compartments?
The whole thing, one block.
The whole thing, one block, no seams or nothing. But you had your fuel tanks. You had all the way of getting it ready and getting them up there. But when he wants to go to Mars. Okay, well, you go to Mars, what are you going to live in? You're going to live in your spaceship? Well, how about if you could take your spaceship and unweld it, the blocks, and build structures?
Yeah.
And have carbon structures.
There you go.
That, and with carbon, some of the gases may escape between the carbon to get out, but not all of it. So you'll have living quarters that you can breathe in, breathe air. You'll have quarters that you can do it really thin and let the sunlight in. You can grow gardens. So carbon structures.
Cool.
He showed me how to compress light. And he actually just the other night showed me the densities, the mass, and the different vibrations of photons.
Okay.
When you look at photons, they're zooming, they're hitting our eyes right now from there, all the light that's getting us. Those are photons that are, striking us. But they have different frequencies. And they're within a very small band, but the whole electromagnetic spectrum, which I believe that part of the spectrum is on the infrared side, the wave is the size of the universe.
Wow.
And on the ultraviolet side, it actually just keeps, we said, oh, it can't diminish past this point, but really it can keep diminishing forever. You know, God's forever, so that can diminish. And even it gave me the ability to write a paper on black stars and how they form and how they act. Not black holes, but black stars.
Sure.
Anyway, so along with that, show me how to compress light. And just recently, I thought about this probably about 7 or 8 years ago, how to compress light to make a solid beam that, like a lightsaber. And I was told that's probably impossible. But science just recently at Caltech just said it is possible to make light fluid.
Okay.
Like it can flow.
All right.
And so if you can make it flow, if you can make it fluid, every state of matter, there's plasma, there's gas, there's liquid or fluid, and then there's a solid. So even photons can take every state of matter, and we just have to find out, you know, the temperatures and how to do it and what it takes to do that. The graphene I was telling you about, making sheets, I've seen pictures of how to use light, sound, magnetism, and temperature to literally bend graphene, and we can make flexible circuits with it, which is not being done right now. Because right now they're like, it's too brittle, we can't do anything with it. But we can. So a new technology, a new industry of building with graphene and being able to grow a lot of it.
Sure.
And then the last thing that just came is a generator.
Okay.
It's using electromagnetic propulsion or a spin, and it's all I can say right now is I've seen the picture of it. I'm not going to get too deep into it because I'm going to have to sign NDAs.
Right.
But basically, we can make a generator that is this small here.
That small.
That small, and it could power your car.
Wow.
Can make one like this. You're going to power your house. A bigger one can power a whole business building. And one the size of a hydroelectric dam generator could power a whole city.
Wow.
And then I was even the other day looking, and again, I actually tried to change what I saw in my mind, and I got chastised. It's like, why are you changing what I gave you? It goes back to that. I'm trying to make it better, but can't make it any better. I saw transmission lines that were full of these. Okay. And they were generating power instead of losing power as it goes through the transmission line. So in places where like they're not going to allow, regulation isn't going to allow a generator, but it may allow the power to still get to the house.
There.
And
that's really cool.
The power line will generate power instead of losing it as it travels. So
one of the things that I'm passionate about is inspiring the next generation.
Oh yeah.
Right. And mentoring and educating, young people to dream and to think this way and not be robots and not just trust the system and just do exactly, but to think outside that box.
Exactly.
That it comes naturally to you. So what advice would you give to young innovators, young dreamers, or young creatives about just stay on that path?
Well, first, I'm going to give the advice to their parents and grandparents and their teachers.
Okay.
And that is, let them dream. Let them feel. Let them touch. Let them think about, hey, can this work? And do the experiments of trial and error. Let them do scientific process. But to the young people, my son, when he was in first grade, he built a computer for show and tell at school. And I brought him all the components. I sat there. I didn't even touch it. I let him do it. He did it because I taught him how to do it.
Right.
When he was in first grade still, we were sitting at the Lube place there in Carson City, where we actually live, not in Reno, but in Carson. And the lady was sitting there and she's like, "Oh, little man, what do you want to do when you grow up?" What does he do? He says, "I want to tell how the earth is moving and the plates." And she was like, "Really? Can you?" And he started expounding on what he had learned. Of course, Dad's sitting there with this big old smile. That's my boy. And she happened to be the instructor at University of Nevada, Reno on geology.
Oh,
and she goes, some of my students come in here, they don't even know this stuff. And here a 6-year-old is telling.
Wow, that's a proud moment.
Right. So, but that's a father, here, learn this, explore your opportunities, expand your mind, expand your understanding. Don't just be like, oh, well, my family did this all their life, so we're going to go do that.
Yeah.
I believe God puts talents in everybody. He gives, there are actually so many types of intelligences. I think there are like 7 or 8 types.
Yeah.
Expand that child on that type of intelligence, whatever they are. Give them an intelligence test, when they're old enough to understand how to communicate, and see where their intelligence is. And it may change as they get older.
Sure.
But start there. Start getting them to think and understand and seek to understand. One of my think tank was, not everything is understandable, but we seek to understand. That was the slogan of the think tank. We want to understand that, because that's how we're going to make things.
Right. That's how you're going to
fix things. Yeah.
Yeah. So your message to listeners, viewers, and young people is to dream big, stay curious, keep asking questions.
Yes.
Keep innovating.
And don't be satisfied with the answers either.
Okay.
Keep asking, because you may get 10 different, even in my industry, I do tech work. You get 10 different answers from a technician how to do something. They all may work. Maybe one of them is actually better and going to get you to the solution faster.
Yeah.
So keep asking the questions, keep thinking, keep dreaming. Now dream big. God He wants us to dream.
He does.
And nothing is impossible for Him. Within physics-wise, for us, yes, there are things, but we don't totally even understand the physics of things.
We're learning more and more.
Yeah, because even things that I thought about, even the bonding of a carbon, I was told, oh, you can't manipulate the bond. That's impossible. Well, no, it's not. I saw it, so it's not impossible. But how do we get there? Well, we just got there. We just found out that we could. It's theoretically possible to manipulate a bond of carbon or other atoms. So think about if we can start bonding atoms together and making new molecules, and and maybe there's stuff that we haven't even thought of yet.
Right. A conversation for another day.
Yes.
So thanks for joining me.
No, thank you.
Thanks for joining us. And
thank you.
If they want to know or learn more, how can they get a hold of you, or how would you want someone to contact you?
So when the video is I'm going to post it on YouTube, and I'll put my contact information in a comment or something.
Wonderful.
It'll be there.
Well, thanks for joining me.
No, thank you so much. That was fun.